Hello and welcome to A Sunny Book Nook. Today I'm going to be talking through all of the stats for this year. I think I'm going to try to scoot over to this side so I can put my infographics right here. Hopefully I'm still in the shot. But yeah, so basically we're just going to go talk through the different genres I read, the different star ratings I gave out, and generally an overview of my reading year. So I read 270 books in the year of 2020, which is crazy. I've never read that many books before in my entire life in 1 year or even a couple years. And I really have to give thanks to audiobooks for that. If I had an audiobook app plug sponsorship here, I would put it here because truly audiobooks really helped me get through so much reading in 2020. And I would also have to say just having more free time and more alone time, like exponentially more alone time, has really helped me be able to get more reading done. So yeah, at the beginning of the year, I obviously had not foreseen the pandemic, so I had originally set my reading goal of 100 books. But obviously, I surpassed 100 books pretty early on in the year, maybe in like March or April. And so I decided to up it to 150, but then by the time summer rolled around, I was already way past that. So I was like, okay, whatever, screw it. I'll just make my Goodreads challenge 270 so I can, like shoot for the stars, And I actually reached it a couple days ago. So a week before the official end of 2020. So what I've been doing with this week is not really reading any new books, doing some rereads, starting books I'm kind of skeptical about, seeing whether I would want to continue them into the new year or not. So yeah, that's how my reading plans have been going for 2020. Let's just dive right into the various star ratings I handed out this year. So for unrated books, these are books that were either comic book editions that I didn't feel needed a rating or anything, or were books that I had to read for something or another that I just did not care for, or were books that were too complicated for me to rate. For example, Bell Hook's book about masculinity called The Will to Change. I didn't rate this book because I thought that I had really complicated thoughts about it and I wasn't quite sure how I felt, but I really respected a lot of what Hooks is saying in here. So I just left it unrated. And within this category of star ratings, I had 13 books here, most of them being comic book editions. And in the 1-star category, I only had 2 books. And those 2 books were The Romance of Lust by Anonymous and Uprooted by Naomi Novik. So I read Uprooted way back at the beginning of the year and I hated it. I thought it was so disappointing and so horrible. And so I will probably not be reading any more Naomi Novik because I really hated this one, enough that I gave it 1 star. And the other book, The Romance of Lust, is basically this Victorian era smut book. And it was just so boring and bad, and I don't know what compelled me to read this, but I really regret it because it was like 450 pages of just pure shit. Yeah, that was a 1-star read, definitely. Moving on to the 2-star reads. I only rated 16 books 2 stars this year, so my 2-star reads are usually like books that are disappointing and bad, but not infuriatingly bad. Like books that I rate 1 star, I have to be mad at that I wasted my time on. But with 2 books, it's like, with 2 stars, I'm like, okay, these books did kind of waste my time, but whatever. It just wasn't for me. It was just disappointing, So yeah, I had 16 of those, so not bad at all. And now moving into my 3-star books, I had 88 books that I rated 3 stars, which is definitely really good. So lots of like average to good reads. And for 4-star reads, I had 97. So I had a lot of really good reads this year that weren't necessarily 5 stars, but that were still really, really good. So then moving into the 5-star category, I have 54 5-star books of this year. I know I am very generous with my 5 stars, but at the same time, I love to read books that I love. And like I'll read a book because I want to love it, So I'm not ashamed to have so many 5-star books and 4-star books, because obviously the majority of the books I read this year are 4 or 5-star books, and that is just so great to me, because even though there were a lot of average reads and a couple bad ones, a couple duds, most of these were really good, and I think this means that I kind of know my taste and I know what I'm gonna like moving forward. And speaking of what I'm gonna like, let's talk about genre breakdown. This was hell to try to figure out. I tried to break up the 270 books I read into 10 different genre categories, but because it's really difficult to sort through all those books and be able to assign each one of them to like a single category, the math on these is not correct. Like if you add all the numbers up, you're not going to get 270 books in total, so I'm really sorry about that. But this is kind of the best I can do with my basic arithmetic skills. Let's just go into my genre breakdown. So the first category I have here is young adult novels. I went onto the stats page on Goodreads, took a screenshot, and just circled the different books that I thought fell into a particular category. I also did this in a mutually exclusive kind of way, so there are no doubles. If one book is like a thriller YA, I would have just categorized it as a YA if I felt that the YA element of it was more prevalent than the thriller element. So yeah, I kind of just used my own judgment there. So here I have, as you can see, 24 books in this category. Next up, we have middle grade, and I read 8 middle grade books this year. We have literary fiction, which was 57 of the books, 57-ish probably, of the books I read this year. Then we have fantasy/sci-fi, which was like 70 of the books that I read this year. So we have romance, which was made up like 15 of all the books I read this year. Thriller/horror, which I categorized together. And within this genre, I read like 12 different books. And then we have short story collections/anthologies, in which I read 13 different books. Next, we have graphic novels/comic books, in which I read 31 different books. Realizing while editing that I forgot to mention nonfiction books, but I did read 31 nonfiction books this year. And next, we have poetry, in which I read 5 different poetry books. As you can see through the star rating breakdown in all of these genres, I think that I am much more likely to give literary fiction and sci-fi 5 stars or 4 stars than I am to give any other genre. And I'm also pretty likely to enjoy short story collections, and I'm less so likely to enjoy young adult and middle grade, but it's still a little bit of a part of my reading, and I still intend to include it in my reading. Moving into my author demographic breakdown. So this is also kind of a loose counting. These numbers are definitely not extremely legit. Like if you went through my Goodreads to make sure everything I'm saying in this video is true, especially regarding numbers, probably not going to happen. That of the books I read, 147 of them were authored by women, or rather 147 authors were women. So how I counted authors was that I didn't double up with my books, because obviously there were some authors that I read multiple books of, so I counted them as each one author, like all together. If 3, for example, like 3 or 4 of N.K. Jemisin's books were on my read list, but I wouldn't have counted her 4 times when trying to account for demographics. Keeping that in mind, I read 147 women authors this year, which, considering that I read 270 books, is a pretty, significant chunk of my reading. So proud to say that. And I read 6 different trans authors, 46 different Black authors, 4 different Indigenous authors, 13 different Asian authors, 3 Latinx authors, and 3 different translated works. I think I was okay in terms of diversity. Like, I could definitely do a lot better. I didn't count the number of authors in total, so I can't give you a percentage breakdown necessarily, but here I definitely see that there's a major deficit in reading of Latinx authors, Indigenous authors, and trans authors. So moving forward, I think I'm going to try to focus more on reading books authored by people who come from those backgrounds and be more intentional about that. because even though I did read a solid handful of trans authors this year, I think that, I should read more. And I think that moving forward, I should explore even more different Black authors, as well as delve deeper into the works of authors that I've discovered this year or read this year that I really enjoyed. So yeah, that is my breakdown video for you, all the statistics of the who's of my reading and the what's of my reading, the different genres I'm touching, and my plans for 2021. I also don't really have any definitive plans regarding my reading for 2021, but I do have a couple goals that I guess I'll just talk about. So I think that for 2021, I'm going to try to read 300 books. Not much is going to change pandemic-wise, at least where I'm at. So I probably will be still having a lot of free time to myself on my hands to just read. So I think I'm going to take advantage of that and try to up my reading game. That's the Goodreads challenge goal and just general reading goal I think I'm going to have for myself. And I also hope that by 2021 I can be monetized on this channel. I'm only like 500 public view hours away from being able to apply for a YouTube creator partnership. So yeah, that'd be really cool to be able to do that. And I also next year really want to read more speculative fiction and sci-fi, because I think this was the year that I really delved into and explored that genre, especially short story collections. I just loved it so much. So many of the speculative fiction / sci-fi / fantasy short story collections and books that I read this year were in my 5-star, 4-star reads. Another booktube goal of mine is to do more themed reading vlogs. I know a lot of people have talked about this, or doing more creative reading vlogs in general, because I think they're so fun to watch and I love consuming that type of content on YouTube, but I just feel like I don't really have the commitment and ability to force myself to read particular books in the disciplined way that so many of you guys do so wonderfully. But I think I'm gonna make a goal to make at least three different vlogs, and at least one of them being a themed vlog. I'm probably gonna look back at this video at the end of next year and be like, that is so funny, you've met none of these goals. But alas, I'm just gonna put them out into the universe and hope they become reality. Let me know in the comments what your reading goals are for 2021 and whether you've looked at some stats for your reading this past year and what you're thinking of maybe improving or changing. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stupid bullshit, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!